My name is Catherine Kent, and I'm with the Solar Store. You know, I've been doing installing solar and involved in the solar industry now for about 37 years. I know that's a long, long time. I like to think that we were doing solar before solar was cool. But one of the common questions that I get is, how do you actually pick a solar contractor? How do you know? Well, one of the first things I always say is, first of all, if somebody comes knocking at your door, whether it be a solar contractor or a roofing contractor or whatever, that's usually not going to be your best choice. So it's important that, if you're interested in solar and you want to be finding out how solar could actually save you money and be green to the environment, it's important that you actually do a little bit of research. And that's what we're going to be here today is talking about. So let's talk about those people that come to your door or anybody that you happen to, we've got all sorts of AI's been involved, and now they start making robocalls, and so you'll get phone calls. I'm just really surprised at the number of calls I get, asking me if I'd be interested in installing solar. And one of the questions that I always suggest people to ask first of all is, who's going to do the installation? And what you're going to find out is that there's a good number of these companies that'll be coming by. Their only job is to get the contract. They're not involved. You're never going to get a hold of them. You're never going to see them again. And in fact, many of them couldn't even tell you who's going to do the installation because they haven't quite figured that out. Because once they get the contract, then they can sell the contract off to contractors and installers. And so in that result, if somebody's coming and wants to sell you solar equipment, make sure that you're going to get in touch with the person that's actually going to be involved in the installation, and that the crews that they are going to have on your roof or at your home are actually working for the same company that is actually writing the contract with you. So why is that important? Well, if there's any problems, you get a bunch of he said, she said things, well, that's not exactly what was in the contract, or that was not exactly what my understanding was, and that's not what I was told to do. So it's really important, once again, to make sure that the person that you're signing the contract with is going to be involved in actually doing the installation. So now you've determined whether or not that contractor actually is going to be involved in the installation. The next thing you need to look at is to make sure that all the documents that you receive actually show the Arizona contractor's license on the documents. It's interesting that within the state of Arizona, even the marketing groups are supposed to have contractor's licenses, although most of them will not. But for sure, anybody that you want to have working on your home needs to have a contractor's license. There's a lot of reasons for this, but more importantly is that you have a third party, a state agency, that will be able to be available if in fact something doesn't go right. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the registered contractors if things don't go right later. But it's important to understand is to look for a number, and that number should say ROC, and then it may have 6 to 8 digits, depending on how long they've had a contractor's licenses. So any of the newer contractor's licenses, I was just trying to say, have they're 6 digits, and if they've had a contractor's license for a really long time, they may only have 5. But it will say ROC, which stands for Register of Contractors. The other thing that you can do, and you should do before you sign any documentation, is to make sure that you go out to azroc.gov. So that is the Arizona Register of Contractors website. You can go up and click on the top and check for contractor search. You can write that contractor name in, and in fact hit enter, and then at that point it's going to give you that whether or not that contractor actually has a license and whether it is still valid. I know there's been lots of times that contractors will put down contractor licenses on their paperwork, and in fact that's not their license, that's just one they sort of pulled out of the air, or they may have expired licenses. The other thing while you're on their website to look at is to make sure whether or not they've had any complaints. Now, I wish I could say that, if they don't have any complaints, then they're perfectly good. But on the other hand, it's not to say that if they have had one complaint that they're not going to be a good contractor. What's more important is whether that complaint was actually resolved. And all that information is available at the Arizona Register of Contractors websites. Now, what you want to also do is to find out when they got their license and how long they've had it. They're a pretty good indicator if they've had their license for a couple of years that they know what they're doing. But I just express some caution if they've just recently got their license, say within the last 6 months, then that just requires that you ask a couple more questions. Hopefully they've been working for another contractor and they've just started their new business, so they do have some experience. But I am very surprised at some of the recent companies that have failed in the southern Arizona area where they really had no idea about how to install solar. That brings up another point that comes in. The license that they need to have is called an 11. It may list as a C11 or a K11, and that is the electrical contractor's license. And so, but just because they have a contractor's license doesn't mean that they know how to install solar. Now, I'm standing here telling you as a journeyman electrician that not all electricians understand solar, as there are lots of things about electrical contracting that I've never had an opportunity to do, nor would I contract for. But it's important that you find a contractor that understands and has experience installing solar. Another thing that you should always do is to ask for and contact referrals. Now, chances are they're not going to give you, your contractor's not going to give you referrals that are, going to say bad things about them. But what you want to ask was, did the installation occur when we were told? Were we communicated? Did they tell us what was going on? Is the system performing the way we expected it to? And it's surprising to me how I have heard that people have sent referrals for people that haven't even gotten their systems installed. So I don't know what you could actually be considered referring if you've not actually gotten your system installed and have no way of knowing what's going on. The other thing is that we want to make sure that you should make sure that whoever comes out, they actually come and visit your house. There's a lot of solar contractors that are sending out contracts and they have only looked at your house from Google Earth, which is not a bad view, and certainly is a first step. But there's a lot of things that the Google Earth does not show up that you need to look at. There are roof vents, there could be, and the quality of the roof and how well that, if that roofing material is intact, those kinds of things really need to be looked at. The other thing which they cannot see from Google Earth is your electrical panel. Is there any extra spaces? Is there enough room to put the equipment that's required? And all of this stuff can only be resolved, and you can only get the permits for if you have all that information. Now, the other thing that you need to do is that according to the Arizona state law, you have 72 hours from the time you sign a contract within your home to be able to cancel it. So you should be able to get, at the same time you sign the contract, you should be able to get your right of refusal or your contract cancellation form. And so I know that there are times when there's hard pressure cells that people feel like the only way they're going to get this person out of their home is to be able to just sign a contract. You can turn around and actually just sign that, send it back off to the company, and tell them you didn't want it, you just didn't like it at all. And so you have that right to do that within 72 hours. Now, the contractors don't actually say whether or not that 72 hours is business hours, but I would say if you're concerned and you don't have all your questions answered, go ahead and complete that form and send it back. And then if you need to, if they come back to you and they're able to answer those questions, you can always re-sign a contract. That's no big deal. But make sure you get that, the 72-hour right of refusal to get out of the contract. The other thing that's been happening a lot is that make sure that the contractor that you sign up with has a local office. Now, this is important because if you need to talk to somebody or you need any issues, it's important that you can find somebody. This is happening a lot where we're getting contractors that are coming from out of town, and they'll come in and they'll do a bunch of installations, and then, you won't have any way to get a hold of them. And of course, the first thing you should do if you have an issue is to call your contractor and try to get it resolved. You don't want to automatically have to go immediately to the registrar of contractors if you have a problem. So it's important that they have a local office if you really want to make sure that you've got a contractor that's going to be with you for sure, for the long term. The other aspect is who's going to do their service. Now, I'm going to tell you, you're going to hear that there's very little service that's required for a solar system, for a photovoltaic grid-tied system, and there isn't a whole lot. But there does need to be some work performed, and it may not be for 5 years or 6 years. Find out who is doing that service and where are they coming from. Once again, some of the out-of-town contractors we hear will actually quote exorbitant fees to be able to come down to look to see why your system isn't working the way it should. Well, if they were local, first of all, they wouldn't have to charge you trip charges and all this other stuff. But in fact, it's more important that they're going to be able to come and look at your system as soon as possible. Because every day that your system's not running is days that you're not getting solar production and days you're not saving money. And that just extends your return of investment. Now, the other parts of when you look at your contract, and some of this is actually required by the state of Arizona, one of the issues is that it's supposed to include two important items. Number one, when how much energy the system is designed to produce. Now that number is, and very often should be on your contract documents. It may be on some sort of third-party attachment that's included, but it's going to be in kilowatt hours. So if you're putting up a 10 kilowatt photovoltaic system, you should be seeing that it's going to produce 17,000 to 18,000 kilowatt hours a year. And that's the kind of power production you should see. And that should be listed on your contract documents at some point. The second thing that should be shown should be when you expect to get the installation installed. And that information should be included. I know on our contracts, we actually have a blank on the bottom part where you sign when we expect to get it installed. Now, there's a lot of things that are involved in an installation, and contractually, it is only an estimated date, but it should give you some time. And quite honestly, anybody that says that they're going to be able to start the installation within a couple of weeks is kind of pulling their leg. And that's because the issues required for us to actually start the installation, they cannot start installation until the utility has given the approval. That is actually a state law. They cannot start installing until you get the utility approval. Now, all the utility approvals, you will be getting emails from the utility saying that they've received your application, that they are reviewing it. They will tell you once it's approved. So you will know when it's approved and when they can start. The second thing that we need to have before we start, which is not necessarily needed before we started, but it's usually recommended to be, is the permit from whether you live in a county or the city, whatever building permit that you have. You should get a copy of that. And hopefully your contractor will send that to you. And if they don't, certainly ask for it before they show up. And take an opportunity to look at it, ask questions. Make sure that the solar panels are where you thought they were going to be. Make sure that the equipment layout on the outside by your service panel is where you think it was going to be. And if those things aren't quite what you want, before the installation starts is the exact time to be able to ask about getting that stuff clarified and changed if necessary. The other thing that we see frequently, and this is a really big, interesting phenomena, is that they're going to say you're going to get a 10 kilowatt system, as I mentioned before, but no mention about what the solar panels are and who the manufacturers are. Who's doing the inverter? And that's the equipment that actually takes the power that's produced by the solar panels and makes it into power that your house can use. So what is this equipment? Ask for that information, and it should be listed on the contract. Now, there are many times, because this industry is evolving, that you may be told that you're going to have, say right now, a 400-watt panel, but what may end up happening is that you may end up having a 405 or a 410. That's the evolution, and you're actually getting a little bit more than you had originally thought you were going to get. But the fact is, you should have an idea who the manufacturer is and what size, because that'll give you an idea of how many specific modules you are. That's going to give you about an idea of how much space is going to be used in that, it's going to be taken up on your roof or outside on your home. But I think the point that I really wanted to try to make here is there are different qualities of solar panels. So you need to know whether or not you're getting a tier 1 module, or you getting a tier 3. And I can tell you quite honestly that there are many, many manufacturers or contractors that can tell you they don't know, actually, once you push them, because they're going to go see what kind of solar panel, what kind of deal they can get when your job comes out. So they can say, well, we may throw out a bigger module than you originally were contracted with, but if you're going to be able to get a module that is not a tier 1 module and you were thinking you were going to get a tier 1 module, then that's important. The other thing that we try to look at is who is the manufacturer. Now, this is becoming more and more important. And after the Chinese government invested strongly in the photovoltaic industry in the 2000s and teens, and the amount of solar panels that came in from China just actually completely disseminated the U.S. market, because they were able to produce and sell these modules for just a fraction of the price that U.S. modules were being produced at. The problem is that about 4 or 5 years later, the Chinese government withdrew their support of the industry, and then all of these companies went out of business. The issue is that most solar panels now have a 20 to 25-year warranty, but that warranty is not even worth the paper it's printed on if the company has gone out of business. So you need, and you have the right to know who's the manufacturer, what's their warranty, how are they going to service that warranty, and not that we're going to predict that those modules are going to fail, but even the manufacturers that are at the top level of the game have had problems with equipment, and then they have to have their modules replaced. If your module gets replaced or you have a problem with it, you certainly have a right to make sure that that warranty is going to be fulfilled. The other part of that I talked about is the inverter. There is a lot of, once again, manufacturers of inverters that are not standing behind their warranties as we would expect them to. And even more importantly, there's different types of inverters out there. Now, you're going to hear a lot about string inverters, and that's the old type of technology, is a string inverter, where all of the solar panels are all connected in a variety of ways, and then they go down to one inverter that is located, it's a big box that's located downstairs by your, on the ground level by your service panel. The latest technology, which is, it's not brand new, it's actually been, the solar store's been installing it since 2010, are microinverters. So those inverters are actually located behind every solar panel. So you have one microinverter and one solar panel. So if you had 20 solar panels up on your roof, you're going to have 20 microinverters. They will all feed together, and then they will all get connected into your load center. But they operate, these particular kinds of systems operate differently. If we go back to the string inverter, and you have modules that are all connected in series, not all solar panels are the same even when they come out of the same batch and when they come out of the same pallet. So whatever solar panel is the lowest producing of that string, that will define what that string is going to do. In many cases, some of the older string inverters, if you had several strings, whatever that lowest panel was, that's going to define the operation of the entire system. The other issue with string inverters and why people are moving away from them is if that inverter fails, your entire system is down. That's right. One panel fails, that may bring down your whole string inverter, and now your system's not doing anything. That's not what you paid for, and that's not what you're expecting. So when we go and look at the microinverters, if there is a problem with one microinverter, that one microinverter and that one solar panel is not working. But other than that, the rest of the system is doing fine. And you may not even know whether that one panel is actually not working or that one microinverter is not working. But the fact is that if you had 20 modules get on your roof, you're only missing 1/20th of your solar production, not 100% as you would with string inverters. Now, the other thing that we look at is with the equipment, and I really want to stress this this is really important, is your system needs to be monitored. And so you should ask your solar contractor, how is it monitored? And do I have, as the customer, do I have access to that monitoring system? You should have access, and most of the reputable companies have apps so that you can actually pull up your system on your phone. You can look at it, say, fine. More importantly, is something goes wrong. A microinverter fails or the string inverter fails, you should be getting an email or a text message that's telling you there's a problem. And that's important because you don't want to wait until you get your first utility bill to go, this doesn't seem right. And then the second utility bill, oh, I know this isn't right. And meanwhile, in the meantime, you have missed out of potentially 2 months of solar production. So as soon as you find out whether or not that system is working or not working, you should be able to reach out to the contractor. But more importantly, this is a question you should ask: who is reviewing the monitoring system? The contractor will have access to it. And as we do at the solar store, we actually go through all of the systems and look at the monitoring once a week. That way we can send out an email to say there's an issue here. And in many cases, because we use mostly microinverters, we can, if there is a problem with a microinverter, we can actually attempt to have the company fix it right sitting in our office, so we don't have to come out to your system. And sometimes they just need to push another firmware update or something, and the system can fix itself and be just absolutely fine. You don't have that with string inverters, and if you have no monitoring, you have to schedule and get somebody out there. You have to call your contractor up to say, can you come out to find out what's going on? And it is surprising to me how long they're expecting people to wait when their system's not working. We've heard of people that have had to wait 2 or 3 months. And I don't want to disparage some of the big solar contractors that used to be in Arizona that have now left, only have 1 or 2 service providers in the whole state, and that they are mostly sitting up in Phoenix, and that they will come down to Tucson, say, once a month. And so you can get on their list to show up that month when they decide to come down to Tucson. All they're going to do at that point is determine what the problem is. If it requires that the inverter get replaced under warranty or your long-term maintenance contract, then you're going to have to wait for another month before they come back to actually do the work. But the point I'm trying to really make here is to make sure that you have an effective monitoring system and that you have access to that monitoring system so you too can figure out what's going on. There are some additional aspects to the monitoring system that provide some value to you as the consumer. One of them is consumption monitoring. So not only is it actually measuring how much the solar is producing, it actually is going to tell you how much energy you're producing. So you'll be able to see on a graph, okay, at this time I'm doing fine. It'll tell you on a daily basis how much you produced, how much you consumed, and then you can actually monitor yourself. Don't we all wish that we could figure out, and I know Tucson Water has promised to provide this for us soon, but to know when we have a problem with our water and we have a leak, we'd love to know when that is so we could fix it right then and there instead of waiting to get an extraordinarily high water bill. So what we can do with your solar monitoring system is to not only monitor how well your photovoltaic system is working and how it's producing, but you can actually monitor how your energy use is going. I know I've got all the cute stories about how with my son, who was in high school when we first got my photovoltaic system installed, and we have tankless water heaters, and he would take showers forever and ever and ever. And you can just see the energy just going out and out and out, producing all this. But the fact is that now we can actually say, this is how much energy it took. So you can actually look and say, oh, well, this is how much it took to charge my car. This is how much it took to cook that roast last night. And just to be more cognizant. And what we found is in energy use that if you're aware of how the energy is being used in your home and you are able to keep an eye on it, you automatically save energy by just being more cognizant of what's going on. Another important aspect of the solar installation that you should get when you are talking with the contractor is how are the attachments going to be made to the roof? Now, there are different types of attachments, just as there are different types of roofs. The flat roof attachment is going to be different than a tile roof attachment, which is also different than a shingle roof attachment. Understand how those attachments are going to be made. Understand how they are making sure that those attachments are waterproof and that are going to protect your home. And I know that there's just a huge variety. When you're looking at the tile, understand exactly how that attachment going to be directly to the truss, or are they using a deck and so they're just putting in a bunch of lags to be able to try to make sure it's got enough pull strength. There is a variety of different attachments, and any contractor that comes to your home to be able to tell you and wanting to sell you should be able to tell you how that attachment's going to be made, give you an estimate about how many holes are going to be in your roof, and you should then be able to understand exactly how that attachment's going to occur. So please make sure you ask those types of questions. We have talked a lot about the equipment and all the other aspects of that. But the other thing you need to find out is got to do with the warranties and the guarantees and how those are taking place. I will tell you that all of the solar equipment warranties actually are transferable to any of subsequent owners. So then they're not tied to you. Now, if you happen to get involved in a lease, then that lease has to be assumed by a new owner, and then you have to contact the company that you have the lease with. And that will also go in the same aspect for companies that are providing long-term equipment maintenance agreements. So making sure that you understand exactly how that's going to transfer in the event that you sell your home. As I mentioned earlier, the solar modules themselves, the solar panels, typically have a 25-year warranty. That's broken up into two aspects. There is the production warranty, and then there is a workmanship warranty. So the workmanship warranty has to do with how well the module stays intact with itself, how the attachments on the back, how the frame stays attached to the solar panel, that the production part and the glass. Typically, that is a 10-year warranty. The 25-year warranty is on production. But what we find is that if there's a problem with the workmanship, typically there will then be a problem with the production, because as the module itself starts breaking down, then the equipment will start breaking down. What we're seeing in the latest trend in the industry is that companies are trying to combine these. So now you don't have a 10-year workmanship and a 25-year production warranty. You actually can get a 25-year production and workmanship warranty. And so looking to find out what that warranty is, how it's determined, because sometimes the production warranty is on a stepwise level. So we will guarantee that it'll produce 80% of its production after year 15, but from year 0 to 15, it can produce 85, and so it ends up being a stepwide production value. What we're seeing now, the latest trend, is a linear production warranty. And those are actually, looking at those and comparing those will help you evaluate whether you have a tier 1 module or not. Because most of the time, if it's telling you that at the 20-year mark, you're going to have 80% of the production, okay, and you look at another module that says, well, at the 20-year mark, you're going to have 85%, that second module is actually a better module. And all solar panels are going to degrade over time. They don't produce as much on day 1 as they will in year 25. And you can look at it and it'll actually tell you, and in the cut sheets, it'll tell you a little bit about what they expect that production warranty to be. Most tier 1 modules will have about 0.5% a year in production loss. But when you get into some of the lower quality modules, it may be closer to 1% a year. And so as you can see, although they could start out at the same point, what happens after 10 years will be significantly different, and how the warranty is fulfilled will be significantly different. There's some equipment out there right now on the inverter end where you have optimizers and an inverter, Interestingly enough, the inverter doesn't have the same warranty as the optimizers. So, it's like, okay, so there's this warranty for this part of the system, and then there's a different warranty for this part of the system, and there's a different warranty for this part of the system. And so it becomes very difficult to understand which part of the system is warranted for what length of time, and then how do I actually get that warranty? I will tell you that most of the time, other than a lease system or where you have a contracted maintenance agreement, you can get anybody to come out and actually get the warranty. We can warranty at the solar store equipment that is not equipment that we sell, but we do have relationships with all the different inverter manufacturers so that we can help other customers get their system up and running in the event that the original installer is either no longer available or not interested in doing the long-term work. But you do need to understand what those warranties are, and you need to understand who's responsible for what. There is one more aspect of the installation that we haven't talked about, and that's the installation itself. The installation itself is required to be covered by the registrar contractors for 2 years from the date that the installation becomes complete. Other companies may extend that warranty, but if they're going to tell you they're going to provide a 10-year warranty, please make sure exactly what that warranty covers. So if you have a roof leak, does it include fixing the roof leak? Does it include any damage that may have happened as a result of that roof leak? So these are a lot of questions to be able to look at to make sure that you have and make sure that you are completely aware of and apprised of the kind of contract that you have. Well, I wish you the best in your time looking for a solar contractor and trying to find the best system for you. Make sure that you are able to provide that contractor with 12 months of your utility bills so that they're able to provide you with a clear estimate of what the system is. Ask for and demand that you know what equipment's being installed, that you understand what those warranties are, who's going to take care of those warranties, and that you have actually a list of the equipment that's going to be installed. If by chance the equipment that you were told that was going to get installed doesn't get installed, ask for that you get a new contract that includes the new information, that includes the new equipment. Because if it is the old equipment, then that's the only thing that the registrar contractors would do. If things don't go right, you do have the right, and it should be listed in your contract, how to contact the registrar contractors. It's not an arduous process. All you can do it mostly online at this point. And you can go in and say that this didn't happen or this didn't happen. Make sure you have pictures, that you have data. And then if you do need to have to go through the registrar contractors, they're only going to be responsible for issues that have to do with the contract and how the contract was performed. If you're not getting the performance that you want, that is a registrar contractor's issue. If you didn't get the system installed where you didn't want to, then maybe you go to the Better Business Bureau and file your complaint through them. If you don't get the system that you were expected to, you always have the Arizona Attorney General's office to file a complaint to. And I hope that you're not having to do that. But it is unfortunate that there's a lot of installers and solar contractors out there that are unscrupulous and that are really just, vying to try to close contracts. And those are the ones that, when we talked earlier about asking if they did the installation, those are typically contractors that aren't doing the installation, that they're finding someone else to do the work. Once again, I wish you the best on your adventure of getting solar. Please feel free to call the solar store if you have any other questions or you have any other things you want to talk to us about. And we look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Take care.